Hello and welcome once again to this Red Gaming Tech video. Myself, Amata, where as always I'm here with the latest news from the tech world in the last 24 or so hours. Today we're going to start things off with a little something from Intel and a little protection against side channel attacks. So back in 2017 was of course when Intel learned of side channel attack vulnerabilities and we first heard the boogeyman words of Meltdown and Spectre, and in response to this they've formed a team by the name of Storm, or Strategic Offensive Research and Mitigations. So basically this was a team dedicated to, well, mitigating against such attacks. Now they have released a new paper, which you can find linked in the description below this video. Now as you might expect, the paper is extremely lengthy, but they have basically proposed a solution to the problem. So what do they have to offer, I hear you ask? Well, essentially it is a memory-based hardware fix which goes by the name of SAPM, or Speculative Access Protected Memory. So basically it would implement a resistant hardware fix in the CPU's memory that includes blocks for known speculative access hacks such as Meltdown, Spoiler, Spectre, and a bunch of other ones that of course has raised their ugly heads since the first ones became known to the public. Now unfortunately they do say that it is a quote theory and possible implementation, so it will take quite some time before this ever sees the light of day inside a working Intel CPU, and that's if, and that's a pretty big if, it ever does, as at the moment it is just a theory that Storm have posed. Now I know there's a question burning at the back of your minds, would this have an effect on performance? Because we all know at the moment, while the software mitigations do not have as much of an impact as they once did, they do still have a downside when it comes to their impact on performance. Now, unfortunately, the SAPM approach would still carry that same problem, but they do say that it would be, quote, potentially lesser than the current impact of all the currently released software mitigations. Now, I'm very much giving you the TLDR here. As I said, the actual paper, which again will be linked below, is pretty damn long. If you're interested in getting involved in the nitty-gritty, you know, what's the ins and outs of this, the techniques they've employed and all that sort of stuff, go check out the link as it's all there for your perusal. So will this see the light of day? Unfortunately we just don't know, but still, interesting solutions being posed here. But we're going to move on now to our second Intel topic of today, which is regarding Cascade Lake X. So we finally have an official announcement from Intel here. We have talked a lot about Cascade Lake X, over the last couple of months. There have been quite a few benchmarks, you know, how it's going to do against the current Threadripper, and of course how it's going to do against the upcoming generation of Threadripper, and so on and so forth. But we now have, again, an official announcement regarding Cascade Lake X. So I'm going to give you pretty much the TLDR of this. There is going to be an article written by Paul linked in the description below this video, or you can just go to redgamingtech.com where you'll find it at the top. So let's talk about the top end of Cascade Lake. So what we see versus the 9980XE versus the top end SKU of Cascade Lake, the 109080XE, they are both 18 core CPUs. And the clock speeds on the CLX are higher on the new generation, of course, but interestingly, we have seen a significant reduction in price versus last gen. The 9980XE would run you about $2,000, but the 109080XE is about $1,000. Not exactly chump change to be sure, but we can't exactly complain about such a significant reduction in the price tag. As for the rest of the specs of the top end, we see a base clock of 3 GHz, a boost of 4.6, all-core turbo is 3.8, and turbo boost max frequency is 4.8. It is of course 18 cores, as I've already said, 36 threads with a 24 meg, or 24.75 to be exact, meg of L3 cache, and up to 72 PCI lanes. And all this pretty much lines up with their leaked slide from a while back, which showed the performance per dollar versus not only Skylake X, but of course the previous generation, or sorry, should I say the current generation of Threadripper, the 2990WX, 2970 and 2950X. Again, I'm very much giving you the TLDR here. Go and check out Paul's article linked in the description below this video if you want the nitty gritty. I will admit, I am surprised to see Intel take such a drastic price cut here. This is obviously in response to how well AMD have been doing, because that is one area where AMD have pretty much mastered, price versus performance and performance per dollar and etc, etc. So Intel have done a more significant price tag than I was expecting. So it is going to be really interesting to see how Cascade Lake fares, especially when we learn more about what's going on with the next generation of Threadripper. Next up, we kind of have a bit of a fusion topic, as we're going to be talking about the Surface Laptop 3 reveal. So you may recall some time ago there was all those rumours circulating that we would be seeing an AMD Ryzen CPU find its home within the Surface Laptop 3 from Microsoft. And actually that's turned out to be true. Sort of. And you might go, okay, what do you mean by that? Well, basically we have two variants of the Laptop 3. So we have a 13.5 inch variant, which is going to be powered by a 10nm Intel processor, but the larger out of the two, the 15 inch variant, will have a custom AMD Ryzen Surface Edition processor. And for those of you wondering about the price tag for these, well, better buckle yourself in because it's not pretty. The Surface Laptop 3 13 inch starts at $999, whereas the Laptop 15 inch starts at $1,199. So yeah, not exactly cheap, but I don't think anyone was expecting them to be. Now, unfortunately, information on the nitty-gritty of the specs is a little thin on the ground. We don't really know much more than what I've already said. We do know, however, that for 10nm, they are claiming that it is 2 times faster than its predecessor and 3 times faster than the MacBook Air. As for the Ryzen variants, they are claiming that it has the fastest graphics performance for a device in its class. So a very interesting tactic from Microsoft here. Two very different variants, where the difference is not just in how big the device is, of course, significant difference in price, and the specs inside. I look forward to learning more. And speaking of that, we do actually have a kind of follow-up piece, thanks to WCCFtech.com, as they have spotted a benchmark on 3D Mark 11 for the Surface Laptop's 3 chip. So what we basically have here is a Ryzen 3080U, and according to WC's report, it can go up to 25 watts TDP, and it has an additional compute unit over the other mobile Zen Plus processors, according to information from AMD. As for the actual performance it puts out, because I know you're just wanting to know, it is capable of 1.2 teraflops of performance. And again, according to Microsoft, the 3780U will outperform a MacBook Pro by 70%. So as for the actual score that has been spotted in 3D Mark, it scored 5,124, or 5124, to be exact. We also have a result for TimeSpy, however, for this very same processor. It scores 1126.5 in 3D Mark TimeSpy. So this is a brand new Zen Plus microarchitecture. So Zen Plus, not Zen 2. Just to give that all-important distinction, which of course is definitely relevant when talking about the expected performance and so on and so forth, but it is so interesting as this is AMD's first foray into ultra-thin laptops. Be curious to see, again, more specs not only for AMD's side, but also for the Intel variant as well, how they compete against each other, and what else is going on for the Surface Laptop 3. Now, there is a very lengthy article on the Windows.com blog. They announce a bunch of other stuff that I'm not touching on here, should I say, like the Surface Neo, the Surface Earbuds, the Surface Pro X, Surface Pro 7. It's a bunch of stuff that I'm not really touching on here, because I could probably spend an entire video talking about just the Microsoft Surface conference. Obviously that's not what I'm here to do today, but you can find a link to their article as well as WC's article in the description below this video. So let's move on, shall we, to our final topic of today, which again is regarding AMD, this time yet more sales figures for Ryzen 3000. So you guys will likely know, if you've been on this channel a while, and if you haven't, welcome, that there is a German retailer called mindfactory.de. They are the biggest digital retailer in that particular country, and every month a AMD subreddit user Ingabor basically posts stats from each company showing the sales of how they did versus each other. And if you have seen my various topics on this, you know that AMD has been on an absolute tear for quite some time. They have been ahead of Intel pretty consistently for months, pretty much the entirety of this year. But we saw the lead that AMD had jump up significantly in July with the release of Ryzen 3000. Not exactly surprising. And now we have the results for the month of September. So let's talk, shall we? First of all, the number of CPUs sold. So we have 81% of CPUs sold going to AMD and just 19% to Intel. How much was that an increase versus August, you ask? A few percent, as we saw 78% in August and 79% in July. Interesting that we see a very slight increase of number of CPUs sold since Ryzen 3000 release month. Thankfully, however, he doesn't stop there. We also know what CPUs each company sold. So, in number of CPUs sold, unsurprisingly, Matisse for AMD made up a staggering 53%. Pinnacle Ridge brought up the second spot at 28%, and of course you have Raven Ridge at 10%, Summit Ridge at 3%, and Picasso at 4%. As for Intel, unsurprisingly, the Coffee Lake refresh took the lion's share here, 74%. Vanilla Coffee Lake was at 23%, and Skylake X and Kaby Lake was rather negligible. But we also have revenue. Now, this is kind of ties into what I was saying here about the performance per dollar and the pricing and all that sort of stuff of each company, because even though AMD's lead before July was pretty significant, the revenue in euros was fairly even. AMD was still in the lead, but only by a couple of percent. That obviously has changed since July. So what about September? Well, we saw AMD making up 75% of the revenue in euros versus Intel's 25%. That is again a slight increase versus last month, where we saw 72% for AMD and 28% for Intel. As for the revenue in CPUs sold, again we see Matisse in the lead, 72% versus the 19% of Pinnacle Ridge, and again the rest are negligible in the sort of 2 to 4% range. As for Intel, again Coffee Lake Refresh was in the lead, only a small increase here versus the CPUs sold, 79% versus the 16% of Coffee Lake, and Skylake X making up just 3%, and the same for Kaby Lake. So, although this is just one, again, major retailer in one country, it is still significant that AMD has been on an absolute tear, and this not looking to slow down anytime soon. If anything, we have seen them increase since the Ryzen came out in July. So, that's pretty much why Intel have woken up from their slumber a little bit, because they have been losing market share. And Germany is an important market, and if we had such detailed information for other markets, we may or may not see a similar story there. Obviously, Intel are more privy to more information than I am. But still, AMD's lead here continues. So, Ryzen 3000 just ain't going to stop or even slow down, apparently. That's me done for this video. However, guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, support is highly appreciated. Do remember to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. It does help out a great deal. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.